And I escaped the violence by running away and learned survival skills at a very young age. I would sleep over at friends' houses. I would make up lies to spend the night there. And I basically lived on the handouts of people who had love in their hearts. I became really anybody's child. But I learned to live on the street since I was 8 years old. My dad, being Danish and German, a non-First Nations man, married my mom, who was First Nation, and she gave up her status as a result. And my family didn't have to go to the residential school because the residential school was for status First Nation children. But I learned to live on the street since I was 8 years old. I broke into homes, broke into various businesses around town. And my friend Rodney Moore and Rodney said I could use his name. But Rodney, one time, he walked into the keysmith office, the person who makes and fixes locks and makes keys. And he walked in there one day. His dad sent him down there to get a key fixed. And when he walked in, there was a parking meter there with a master key in it. So needless to say, the store owner was in the back somewhere. Rodney grabbed the key and came, and I was the first one that he told that he had this key, and he had already tried it. And so we had the key to every parking meter in Whitehorse at that time. And I can remember in 40 below weather, 2 o'clock in the morning, when I was sure there was nobody around, all kinds of ice fog. And I would come up and check the parking meters and get money out of the parking meters. It was only quarters, dimes, and nickels at that time. I think I was born before my time. I should have been born now. But that was part of my growing up. And needless to say, my career as a parking meter attendant was very short-lived. But I lived off the avails of crime because of the violence at home, and didn't know what to do with me. Probation officers didn't know what to do with me. They didn't have no detention center at the time, so they put me in the Lower Post Indian Residential School as a way of controlling me. And I fell into the hands of a pedophile there. And I was there for 3 years, and coming out of that institution, and in that institution there's no love, there's no control. The senator spoke about people having no control, nothing to say. And coming out of there, I first got drunk at the age of 12 to start the only way I could kind of deal with what was feeling inside, feeling dirty and feeling damaged. And I need to say that every person living in poverty has their story, and it's a valuable story. But I lived as an alcoholic off the avails of crime for 27 years, and as a drug addict for 23 years. I used to stand outside the liquor store in Vancouver begging for change. I spent 10 and a half years of my life in various jails in Canada, 8 years at WCC alone. We called it WCI at that time. But I ate out of garbage cans in Vancouver's downtown east side. I slept in alleys, park benches, friends' floors, hotel bathtubs. I collected empties, and I have shivered through the long, cold, lonely Vancouver night in mid-November, curled up in a doorway with nothing but a thin shirt and a piece of flattened-out cardboard box to lay on, as my body was being racked with the pains of withdrawal from alcohol and drugs. And what I remember the most about that time was the loneliness. the loneliness, all I wanted, I remember at that time, was I wanted a warm place. I wanted a warm bowl of soup. I wanted a cigarette. And I wanted someone to talk to. And I couldn't get any of those things. And that's when I realized the utter depth of loneliness and of poverty. I remember holding a knife to a cab driver's throat in Vancouver. And I heard him beg for his life, for his wife, and for his children. I wound up in a psychiatric ward at Chilliwack Hospital, going through DTs, withdrawals from alcohol. And near the end, before the change happened in my life, in Vancouver, I would stick a needle full of heroin and cocaine into my arm 15 to 20 times a day. I had water-filled blisters on my feet. I could barely walk. And I would walk the city streets, God only knows how many nights, with no place to live, no place to go, and no one to turn to. Because I couldn't find the courage to reach out and let someone know I'm so lonely inside, I'm so hurt inside, and I so need some love inside. Any kind of love. And it was at those times, that time, that I found that love in Jesus. And my life started to change when I started to read and do what the Bible said to do. Prior to this, I went to treatment centers. I went to Crossroads. Went to AA, Narcotics Anonymous, Cocaine's Anonymous. That didn't help. And I would like to share with you now 7 of the bridges that helped me to come out of and rise above poverty. This is what worked for me. I don't know if it'll work for others. I believe it will, but this is what worked for me. Number 1 was I never gave up. I attempted suicide twice. Of course, didn't make it. Wasn't even good at that, I felt. But I never gave up. And we can never give up on anyone. Number 2, I always prayed and believed that God heard my prayers. Number 3, I faced the fears of my loss in treatment, in a safe environment. I faced the fears of who I was, what I had become, and the realities of my past. And 4, I worked on and built a new identity. And that identity was as a Christian, later on as a social worker, as a counselor, but really as someone who cared. Number 5, I went back to school. And I got an education. And this is so very important. And I actually told Stuart that you're part of why I'm here. You're part of the journey. And number 6, I made new friends. I changed my old circle of friends.